Good evening. Now, I've got suitable dress on to spark, to not only spark, but to speak to Windows, who's actually lost his first name, which is Mark. And I've been reading the establishment cult newspaper, which is the Merioneth Labour Party leaflet, and also the Cumbrian News. And you'd never think I was part Welsh because I can't say Cumbrian News. And of course, Mark has mysteriously lost his first name. Where has it gone? See, Fairborn can see through windows. Where are you, Mark? Come back. I'm suffering from establishment cult.
I'm here. It was me all the time.
By the way, sorry about the. Hope the sound's all right now.
It's a lot better, Chris. Yeah, it was just getting a bit irritating, so we had to pull it. It's the establishment trying to get back at us, you see, because we were ribbing them mercilessly.
Well, that's right, because I read those that nice leaflet and that fantastic Cumbrian News. And don't you think that is the height of journalism? I mean, I read into it, and I've been trying to find the scientific stuff that those two bastions and pillars of the community as community journalists have actually written. But unfortunately, all I could find was bullshit.
Well, it's funny that you mention that, Chris, because that's what I found as well. And it says Fairborn can see through windows. In the latest bizarre twist to hit residents of Fairborn, this is a little village in North Wales, in case anybody doesn't know, in Gwynedd in North Wales, and it's been threatened with decommissioning, which means that they're predicting massive sea level rises and they're going to stop the coastal defences. They paid many millions for a coastal defence, which actually took out all the clay and they put a load of rocks in there. Apparently one side of Fairborn is rising, and that's not really been disclosed by these alarmists. And then we did a show 18 months ago, and we had the world's leading expert, or one of the world's leading experts in sea levels, Niels Axel-Morner, who was willing to go to court over this decommissioning. So in other words, he's saying the sea levels would never rise to these predicted outcomes that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the go-to place for the media to talk about climate alarmism. And basically what happened was Niels said he would go to court as an expert witness for the people of Fairborn in a show we did about 18 months ago. Then what happened was a fellow called Chris Hickman, hello Chris if you're listening, actually booked us to do the talks down there. And he said, well, we might as well do it in Fairborn. I said, yeah, because he lived near Fairborn. So we decided to do that. And then I got a local journalist phoning me up about the talks. And he said, well, I hear that you are coming down and people are saying you're spreading conspiracy theories. What have you got to say? So I gave him all the evidence. I gave him an IPCC report that Niels Axel-Morner had done. In other words, he was resigning from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change because of scientific fraud with the computer modelling. And he'd been an expert IPCC panelist for 3 of their papers. They put out these reports, AR4, AR5, and AR6. I've read the AR5 and AR6 and some of the AR4. They have these summary documents, and they have these recommendations that sea levels are going to rise, it's going to get warmer, they're trying to keep everything within 1.5 degrees and all this. It's really based on computer modelling and isn't based on any empirical data or evidence. That's the most important thing. So when we found out what was happening in Dwyfor Meirionnydd Labour Party, it was a bit late. We were already down there, and every house had this put through the letterbox, which was slanderous. And it said, in the latest bizarre twist to hit residents of Fairborn, a man called Mark Windows, who puts together his own YouTube recordings, is visiting Fairborn. I don't know what my YouTube recordings have got to do with visiting Fairborn, but never mind. They put that together as though that was some kind of a homonym in the first paragraph. Windows is one of a small gang of climate change. See, a climate change deniers gang as well. See, even though I went down there on my own, Sandy Adams was one of the speakers, and also we had Chris Hickman who put the talk on. So we're all individuals, really. It says is intent on visiting the UK's first community. Well, it wasn't intent on there. I got invited actually to try and tell Fairborn it's not happening. Well, there isn't anything happening there at the moment. That is true. On top of this, he intends to charge £12 for the experience. Now, that's an out-and-out, flat-out lie, because the talks were being put on free. We were originally going to charge, but we wanted as many people in the village hall as possible. So we did it for nothing. And he knew that. These propagandists knew that. This, was, I believe, was put together by this Labour candidate, Graham Hogg, who's now disgraced himself. And it quotes in here someone called Pete Layden. Not only is this guy denying the facts about what is happening to our village, he also hopes to make at least £1,000 out of us. So that's a flat-out lie, Pete Layden. You're a liar. He actually thinks we are going to pay to hear his nonsense. Well, no, 64 people turned up and they didn't pay and they heard it and it wasn't nonsense. So you're wrong on both counts there, Mr. Layden. Mr. Windows used to work on People's Voice, created by David Icke, the man who famously claimed to be son of the Godhead. Well, what that's got to do with me, I don't know. It said recently Windows made a recording, Mind, Virus, Zombies and Climate Change, with Niels Axel Morner, a Swede who, as well as denying sea level rises, also claims to possess paranormal abilities to find water and metal using a dowsing rod. Now, what he's referring to here is that Niels Axel Morner has been slated a bit on Wikipedia, and most of his scientific peer-reviewed stuff has been taken off because he went against the consensus, the IPCC. The IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has never predicted anything that's happened. So they were set up in 1998 to prove that anthropogenic global warming was actually happening. They have no other purpose apart from that. Their purpose is not to be scientific. They're not a scientific body, even though they have some scientists who actually contribute to their documents. So they're not a scientific body. They're there to prove that anthropogenic global warming, human global warming, is happening. That's the whole purpose of it. It's a super agency set up by the United Nations. And we talk about that in our talks. We give them all the background of this. So Pete Layden and these other propagandists like Graham Hogg, they could have come in and educated themselves, but they chose not to. They like to snipe up the sidelines and basically put out what we call logical fallacies and ad hominem attacks. So basically called Niels Axel Morner a Swede. Well, he is Swedish, but he is one of the world's leading experts in sea levels, and he has 50 years of experience. And he also wrote a letter to I think it's the Prime Minister of the Maldives, and said that your islands will not be drowned by rising tides, rising oceans, because what's happened is some of the land masses are sinking, some are rising, but you've got nothing to worry about. And they haven't got anything to worry about because the Maldives are building smart cities. There's a smart city which is absolutely horrendous. It's like a super prison that's been built on one of the Maldives islands. So they're not taking the sea level rise seriously, not as far as the smart cities agenda go. And of course, if it was serious, you wouldn't be able to get a mortgage in London. Very important point. If you live in most parts of London, central London, especially anywhere near the river, you wouldn't be able to get a mortgage. You can still get mortgages. So the developers and the people behind this, the bankers, are still making the money. They're not bothered too much about sea level rise because they know, well, you know, it's not exactly how it's been presented to the useful idiot. I wasn't going to use the term useful idiot, but I think Lark in Texas has encouraged me to use it again. But basically, yeah, it says, Fairborn resident Roger Duke says it's an utter disgrace that these people think they can come to our village to trade on our misfortune. Oh, the victim card. He's got out the victim card. Oh dear. It's so hurtful that you've come here to tell us the truth. What a loser, Roger Duke. Yeah, just to make money out of us. Well, no, we didn't. We lost money, actually, Roger Duke. We lost money. So there you go. They should be ashamed of themselves. Well, I hope you're ashamed of yourselves, because we're going to keep going on about this, because Mariola's Labour Party, you're a disgrace. You're an absolute disgrace. And this was the newspaper headline. Now, this is really funny. Protest planned against talk giving false hope. This was written by someone called Patrick Hollis. Well, there was one protester, and the people. So, in other words, there were 65 times more people who didn't want to protest than did want to protest. So the protest was outnumbered by 65 to 1. There was just him, a fellow called Quentin Deakin, and we did ask if he wanted to come in, and he said, "I'm not listening to your propaganda. I don't want anything to do with your organisation. I said, I'm not an organisation, I'm an individual. He said, I'm not paying to hear your propaganda. I said, you don't have to pay, it's free. So he's wrong on both counts. So none of what these people said had any basis in reality whatsoever. So he says a protest will take place in Fairbourne against a talk which local campaigners claim will give residents false hope. Windows on the World will hold a talk at Freog and Fairbourne Village Hall, blah, 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 blah. And they say that advising the public that Fairbourne is being threatened with extinction through fearmongering. That's not what I said. So he's totally misquoted me. And I said that there's fearmongering, but that's you're not being threatened by fearmongering. You're being threatened by policy. It's very, very different. The policy is what is threatening the village. Basically, the UN Global Action Plan, Agenda 2030, depopulation of the countryside and coastal areas. That's what we're talking about. So basically, yes.
Can I hold you there, Mark? Excuse me for broadly cutting in, but you said decommissioning. Decommissioning Fairbourne Village. Now, there used to be a thing called requisitioning in World War II, where the military could come to your house and say, we are requisitioning this house on behalf of the king, and you've got 10 minutes to get out. And that was that. And they took over a lot of stately homes that were wrecked by the military. There was a whole village in, I think it's Dorset. I think our people in chat might be able to correct me on that. And that was, I think it was during the war. And the people were given a certain amount of time to get out. I don't think they got compensation. And that village is still there, and it's uninhabited. It's now belongs to the military. I can't remember the name of it, but I know that for a fact. So this kind of, I call it requisitioning or whatever, isn't that a rather disturbing situation? Because what's going to happen with Fairbourne? Are the people going to be given a certain amount of time and saying, I'm sorry, health and safety, you're not allowed to live here, or something? Or how are they going to do it? I mean, this sounds...
We're talking about something above national government. So you're talking about the Crown. Now, the Crown has ownership of all property. The Crown gives you a title deed for your house. So when you buy a property, even if it's freehold, you're buying the foundations, which go down about a foot, and you're buying a title deed of the property, because you can't own property in this system. People don't get this. If you own the freehold, you own the title deed to a freehold. It's not the property. You cannot hold property because you can't physically hold it. You're going to die and that property is going to go to somebody else. So you can never own property. Not in this system, you can't anyway. You can't own it because you're going to die. So you get given a title deed, and a title deed is what's called usufruct. You have a usufructory interest in the property, which means that you have use of it under the title deed. Because the title deed is owned by the Crown, it's property of the Crown, which is why if there's a motorway going to be built through your house, it can be compulsory purchased. In America, they call this eminent domain. An eminent domain in America was used to steal a lot of property under what we talk about, and which ties into this. And it's called Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. And this idea that comes out of it is basically a new form and system of law, because what it means is that private property is not sustainable. Therefore, property rights are hugely diminished under United Nations Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 as it is now. So when people say they talk about decommissioning, decommissioning is being done on the back of climate change, on the projections that climate change will get so bad that people can't live there. There's no proof to this, and that's what we went down there to talk about. So basically, these few propagandists who put this, they managed to get this into the paper. Now, think about this. We had 65 people who came to the talk, and 65 people still turned up. But what this Patrick Hollis was trying to do by putting this in this Cambrian Times, he was trying to incite people to protest against it, because he said that Extinction Rebellion groups, Greener Towing and the Labour Party have been contacted, and it's likely that there will be some from each of these groups. So this is incitement. This is incitement for people to protest against something which is in their own interest, which I think is a breach of journalistic trust. So Patrick Hollis, who's a trainee journalist, well, he's not a journalist at all, he's a propagandist, put out this nonsense after I was on the phone to him for over half an hour. I sent him links to everything I was saying, to the policies that were being implemented, and I sent him a link to Niels Axel Morner's resignation from the IPCC and Niels Axel Morner's video testimony saying that he would actually help the people of Fairborn as an expert witness in court. So these people are working against the public interest. It's quite simple, really. And then he followed it up with the photographer came to take our pictures, but I haven't got a physical copy of this. I've only got a screenshot. So the actual follow-up to this article, which said protest plan against talk giving false hope, was activists protest climate change dinners talk. Absolute lies, absolute slander. Why does he say that I'm denying the climate changes? How can you deny the climate changes? What sort of idiot would do that? This person has been mentored by the intelligence services through people like The Guardian, because that's where it comes from. It's called controlling the narrative. And what we have is a whole group of people within the administration sectors of society and public office who have been lied to and want to repeat those lies. It's a religion, it's a belief, and it's dogmatic. And it's much the same as the Catholic Church saying that there was no salvation outside the universal church. In other words, you have no right to go against our consensus. Well, I'm afraid 65 people did, and they listened, and they were very, very grateful. An old lady came in and showed me this piece of nonsense, which I think was written by this hopeful Labour MP, Graham Hogg. And she said, "Have you seen what they've written about you?" I was quite annoyed actually when I saw it. But the thing is with this, Chris, is that I'm used to it now. I had all this at the People's Voice. I've had all this for years. Once you start attacking or you get anywhere near the truth in this country, it's a totalitarian country with a strict regime that is enforced by the intelligence services through the controlled media into think tanks, into the public, and into public office at every single level. And it's called communitarianism. So basically, these people are useful idiots for an agenda. It's soft Bolshevism. And that's, basically what it is. So you've read this article, haven't you, Chris, as well?
I've read that article, and also going back to what you said earlier about inciting a sort of protest. I heard on BBC local propaganda radio, one of the broadcasters said, whilst your teenagers are busy with the climate emergency protests, what are you doing to offset the dangers of man-made global warming? That now, isn't that a kind of trying to push? I just
coercion. So basically, absolute coercion. And what they're doing is they're using basically psychological steering techniques. So all of these people that use this sort of stuff are propagandists. They're not honest, they're liars, and they're working against the public interest. So it's in the public interest to call them out. So Patrick Hollis, I'm calling you out. Graham Hogg, I'm calling you out. We've got an article on windowsontheworld.net, and it's called, what's it called actually? I've only just written it. It's called Welsh Labour Party Disgrace, because they're a disgrace to the Welsh Labour Party. I've also posted it on the Welsh Labour Party page on Facebook. But we actually asked them for their address of service, Meirionydd Labour. We asked them for an address of service. They ignored us. We asked them if Graham Hogg was the author of this hit piece, and he blocked me on Twitter immediately, even before I'd asked him. So these people are basically cowards. They run away. They've got nothing to say, and they will lose in a debate. And that's the point. They're basically there. They're self-serving as well, because sorry, Chris. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in, but as I said earlier, when I was promoting my father's book, and my father wrote a book that was, shall we say, not establishment, so I couldn't really get it published by the establishment route, so I had to publish it myself and draw out my savings and do everything myself, i.e. publish it and promote it. And back in the late 1990s, when it was published, it was about World War II. He was in World War II. The only places I had to go was the local newspapers, and try and get on local radio and things like that. I had to, the internet wasn't about what it was about, but it was in its infancy then. And I found, with the exception of about 2 or 3 journalists, even though I gave them the press statement, they still put their own fantasy in, a load of old rubbish in, and people were sending letters in saying, oh, he wasn't there, he wasn't doing this about my father, because the damn journalists have got things wrong. They were saying he's in places where he wasn't. He was in Gibraltar, where they got that one from. And the other one was, he hit hard in Vietnam. My father wasn't in Vietnam. He wasn't. He was English. He was in World War II. But Adrian mentioned something about. Here it is. It says here he has evidence of British blowing up British property in World War II and blaming it on Jerry. Yes, I've heard that. And he did mention about V1 Doodlebugs bombs in Dorset. I don't think they had the range of Dorset. They went through Kent, which was known as Bomb Alley, and their target was London. They wouldn't have. I don't know for sure. They might have done a few in Dorset, but I think that would have been beyond their range. They could just about get to London. So I just sort of settled that matter. And but as I said earlier, these journalists that are going for you like this, they must be frightened of it, because there's no content in what they write. And there's if they would have said,
no.
Well, according to Professor Duflop, he said this, and Professor Watsit says this, so you're talking a load of rubbish, Mr. Windows, because I've got the evidence here. No. So all we have to ask them is say, please give me your evidence. And the answer is none. They ain't got any.
Well, what they do is quite interesting, because I posted this article because I want them all to see it, really. And I posted it on this thing called Climate Change Battle Royale, which is full of kind of people who just want to talk rubbish all day, really. But I posted it on there, and some liar basically said, oh, Niels Axel Morner, he says that the weight of pineapples is making islands sink. And I said, stop lying. I said, he's written hundreds of peer-reviewed papers, blah, 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 blah. And here's his resignation from the IPCC. So you're denying that he's been on the IPCC as well. Stop lying. Basically, and they can't really come back. They just, when they run out of superlative propaganda, I mean, this is like a mental illness, though. It's like a mind virus. I think that what's interesting about this is that we can now get into the point where putting out the truth is quite revolutionary, and also it's quite satisfying, because these people are conflicted. They're liars. They're lying to themselves. They can't back up what they say. There's no depth to them. They're basically flighty. They're cowardly, and they throw things and run away. They will not stand up to you. They do not want to debate. We've had this Extinction Rebellion when they turned up in Glastonbury. I was very friendly to those people when he got the fella calmed down. And the funniest thing he said was, don't you realise half the southern hemisphere is underwater? I said, no, it's 2/3. It always has been, They haven't got a clue. And they don't want to debate. I've given all these people nowhere to find me, and they do not want to get in touch. But this was pretty disgraceful. It's a local newspaper, which nobody really reads, I don't think, according to the people who came to our talk. And that's not me sort of having a go at them. I just don't think people do read these things. Obviously they don't, because it didn't have any effect. There was no protest. There was one person. And then they had the cheek to say that there had been a protest in the follow-up article, which of course they hadn't. They should have said, protest against talk falls flat. Or they could have said that Fairborn welcomes Windows on the world. Well, they're not going to say that, are they? But it's important to have a protest. People going away from this event may think Windows of the world is widely supported. He said, well, it's more widely supported than he is. 65 to 1.
Trying to create animosity and aggression, because, just saying, there's 800 residents there.
Yes,
a local newspaper. Now, if it's a small family newspaper, it must be hanging on by its finger.
No, I don't think it is. Well, if it is, why are they? See, the thing is, Chris, there's loads of really good journalists out of work. I know really good journalists who are just scratching around earning money off the internet now. So if these people were getting paid properly, I think they'd have better journalists, because these are trainee journalists. He's a wannabe. This is the sort of rubbish that it's even the Guardian wouldn't print this, you know. But he said, Mr. Hogg said, Windows, the leader of the group, is offering false hope that sea level is not rising. Well, I'm not the leader of any group. I'm not the leader of a group. I'm an individual. I work with nobody. I'm unaffiliated. I may agree with certain groups, but I'm not part of one. Yeah.
It gives me the impression it's written by an adolescent, somebody of about 14, because, you know, you go through a stage of life where when you're an adolescent, you're sort of, I'm at war with the world. Because all teenagers know everything. And I think we all went through that stage of teenagers knowing everything. And that journalist gives me the impression that his mental age is of a teenager, because, you know, I know everything, but know nothing. And it's only when you grow a little bit older into your 20s, you think, so, well, no, I don't know everything. And the more I discover, the more I realize I don't know. So I think that they're showing a kind of they're not educated to it, but they're just showing that they're adolescent. And that is what I find disturbing. And a person who wants to put themselves up as an MP with an adolescent mentality, allegedly, I find that very, very disturbing. Very disturbing. As if that's what's putting up.
Yeah, well, he said, sadly, Mark Windows' conspiracy theories on sea levels not rising are as reliable as rumours that alien remains can be found at Roswell and Elvis is still alive. Well, that's not even a good logical fallacy, because we say, I suppose you think that Elvis is on the far side of the moon. You know what I mean? But its actual thing is about that, is that according to eyewitnesses and even people who were connected with the military, if you believe these kind of shows about Roswell, because there was a really good one about 15 years ago, and there was the original eyewitnesses were still alive. They were very old, but I thought it was an interesting thing, because it was such a remote place, Roswell, and I thought it gave it a bit of kind of strangeness, the fact that all these people kind of lived in these shacks in the desert, really, and they just filmed them there, you know. And they were saying that the military took away what was something very strange, and they left a weather balloon there. Now, you see, the thing is, so it's not even good at logical fallacies. And the other thing is that Elvis may still be alive.
In Tesco's, in my local Tesco's, he's next to Roy Orbison. You know, and if you believe that, you want to yeah,
I used to work with Elvis acts all the time.
His flares
getting to work with Elvis acts all the time.
Really?
Yes, and they used to hang their suits up on the back of the door in the dressing rooms, and they'd always say, "Do you know how much that suit cost?" And I'd say, "Yeah, you got it from Vegas, and it cost about $2,000." And he goes, "How do you know?" He says, "Because I've shared the dressing room with many Elvises."
I like the one on Only Fools and Horses. I think where he gets
this one I ever did.
Puts it down his trousers before it goes on.
The funniest one I ever did was in Margate, and I did an Elvis convention in not Margate. It wasn't Margate. No, I did a Chaz and Dave thing in Margate. What was it? I was doing an Elvis convention. It was near Great Yarmouth. It was. Oh, it'll come back to me in a minute, but it was in a really funny sounding place. And Mablethorpe. It was Mablethorpe. I did an Elvis convention in Mablethorpe. It's a bit of light relief for everyone.
Hello, Mabel.
And I turned up, and they wanted me to be doing my own act, which wasn't Elvis. They just said, "Oh, as long as you don't do any Elvis." I said, "No, I don't." You know, I mean, who'd want Elvis at an Elvis convention? But what it was, they were very serious about Elvis. So they banned people from dressing up as Elvis, okay? So you weren't allowed to dress up as Elvis. It got to about 9 o'clock at night, and there was this fella trying to get in. I was going into the bar. I was doing the gig on the Saturday, and it was the Friday night. I thought, I'll go and have a drink with the Elvis crowd, you know. And so I went down to the bar, and it's got two doormen on there. And there's a fella outside, and he's obviously spent most of the evening trying to squeeze himself into this Elvis jumpsuit, you know, with his getting it over his beer gut, going, like this. And it's so tight on him. He's walking like this, and the security say, "You can't come in here dressed like that." He said, "What do you mean? It's an Elvis convention." He said, "Yeah, but you're not allowed in dressed as Elvis." So he had to go and change and come back again. It was hilarious. Well, they take it very seriously, you see.
Oh, I don't. I'm going to upset everybody now. I'm not that keen. I couldn't stand his films though.
I used to like because they always used to do in the ghetto at the end of the night, and it'd just be kids running about and drunk parents, you know, it'd be in some holiday camp freezing somewhere, and it'd go,
You're better than the original. I think you should.
Oh, I can't say that. He was great. What I liked about Elvis actually was I liked the way he sang, because he sang like an opera singer would sing. So he was actually impersonating an opera singer in a way, because if you push the voice down, that's what you get. So he's actually a really good singer. The way he was doing it, it's a very good thing he was doing. Very technically good, you know. And I think he was having fun with it. I think he was having fun with it, you know.
I think you're right. The only one I like is Wooden Heart. I think it was fantastic that he did. And he sung in German part of the way through. And he did that in the late 50s.
Oh, yes,
that really was well put together, that record. And the content was excellent. And but I like his early stuff. It was pretty good, you know. Anyway, let me get on to Elvis from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, back to what we were talking about.
No, I don't like Roy Orbison.
Sorry? No, Roy Orbison.
I don't like Roy Orbison much, but I like Elvis.
Didn't like his sunglasses either.
What you said.
He had an eye problem, but he didn't. He just wore them as a fad.
But did you mention Roy Orbison?
Yeah, because he works on the bacon slicer with Elvis.
Right. I used to do these tribute shows. And I used to work with people like Tina Turner and Rod Stewart, you know. And I remember being in the dressing room with them, you know. And there was a fella called Jack, and he'd won Stars in Rise. And there's another one. He was a Rod Stewart. But there's loads of Rod Stewarts about, right? And there was one called Des Martin. And we did a gig with him in Blackpool, you know, which is the only place you can do a gig with Rod and Tina. It's Blackpool material, you see. And he said our keyboard player didn't wear very much. She used to wear very little on stage. And he comes up in the interval, he goes with his little dimp, and he goes, "Here, love, are you going to cover your legs up for the second half? They look a bit pasty." And he's still around, but somebody set up a website, and it was called whatacunt.com, yeah? Mm-hmm. And he was number one on it. I think he had it pulled down. Ever since he stopped being a plumber and thought he was Rod Stewart, this arsehole has become more and more intolerable.
I'd see the bloke I could never stand.
Well, I made a whole thing up about it.
Well, Frank Sinatra, I always thought he was a better actor than singer. I can't actually I can't listen to Frank Sinatra sing off the note. I just find him irritating.
I thought it was brilliant.
Really, some people, I don't know.
I thought it was brilliant in. I thought it was brilliant in the Man with the Golden Arm.
Yeah, I saw the one number the grave. He was pretty good in that as well. That was a pretty good film. He was a good actor. But did you know how?
Man with the Golden Arm had the. I think we're overlapping again. I can't hear you.
It's starting to go again.
You can't hear me. I don't know what it is.
I can hear you, yeah, but I think we're.
Right, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's what it is. You're on the moon at the moment, looking for Elvis's body, and I think there's a time lag.
That's one of the problems.
That's the problem. Or perhaps there's some sort of alien in between doing something. But no, actually, back to what we said. Sorry, have you finished about Frank Sinatra? Old Blue Eyes.
You do something to me. He always drops the note. and nobody else I know does this. You can put it into any song you like. You can put it into any song. You can go, cheer up, Sleepy Jean. Oh, what can it mean? It drops the note all the time.
I did hear.
Hi ho, silver lining, anywhere you go.
Okay, you're better than the original.
What am I doing here then? I should be at Blackpool Pier. There's no one on Blackpool Pier. It's finished. It's closed. There's no goes there anymore.
What about Southend? Is that still there? The pier? I don't know. I was told that's going to it's either falling down or it fell down.
Southend Pier is really long. It's about a mile long. I walked down there last Christmas. It's really interesting. It's a really long pier. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the longest pier in the country.
That's right. Is a train still going on it as well? It used to be a little electric train used to go backwards and forwards.
Yeah. I didn't get the train though. I walked. And I went right to the end and I climbed down underneath the pier, and it was really quite striking, to be in there, just being right in the middle of the waves and that. It was quite an intense experience. Yes.
I should think so.
Getting back to the idiot, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a rumour about Southend. They reckon that you can smell the sea air on a Thursday afternoon when the burger bars are closed. But I've just upset everyone from Southend now. But sorry, getting back to the
very upmarket now.
Sorry, is it upmarket now?
It's very upmarket now.
Blimey, I haven't been there.
It wasn't when I used to go there years ago.
Well, same here, yeah.
It was quite run down when I went there.
Well, it used to be a dump.
But it's actually quite upmarket now.
Really? Because the
so carry on with this then?
Yes, certainly. What was I going to say about the useful idiots? Basically, that's what they are. I mean, I would have been fuming if something like that. But again, I think they've shot themselves in the foot because, as you quoting what you say, you hit them with facts, they run away. Totally run away.
Well, the thing is, you see, that this wannabe journalist, even in the follow-up to this, he's still an activist, protest, climate change deniers talk. So he's called me climate change denier. So he is an idiot because who would deny the climate changes? And also, the point is that I told him, this Patrick Hollis, that I was talking about policy, talking about global policy. Niels Axel Morner is the expert. I'm not making any claims at all. What I'm doing is bringing some information, and he's suggesting that he would become an expert witness, so it could become a landmark court case. So these traitors who write for the Cambrian Times and this Graham Hogg, these traitors to their own community, have made fools of themselves. We've got the moral high ground. Yes.
Right. Well, it was, I mean, that is. I always think, as I say, when you look at these people, there's nothing there. They're just empty vessels. I'd like to, if it's okay, we'll move on to last week. I was talking about a hypnosis evening I was going to, which I went to last night or yesterday evening, which was quite interesting.
Oh yeah.
But a spin-off from that.
Wait a minute, Chris. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3. You're under. And you're coming back out of it now. That's it.
Well, very nice people, exceptionally nice people. And a spin-off is I went into this, it's like a sort of, it's an interesting shop. I wouldn't say it's a new agey shop. It was very interesting. It was remedies and that type of thing. And I was early, and I spoke to the lady who does the hypnotherapy, and I spoke to the proprietor of the shop. And a spin-off from this is that what they're doing around that area is the businesses used to be able to pay to park, and I think, oh dear, I didn't write this down. I think it was £300 or £400 they paid a year for the privilege of parking, and they've put the price up to over £1,000. I think it's 1,400. Again, if the lady's watching this, she's probably saying, he's got it wrong, but it's that. I know it's over £1,000, and she's up against the council. And I said, Mark Windows has been up against the council, and so have I. And I said a few things about how councils, and they put apparently a lot of bureaucracy in the way to stop her protesting or getting, lots of signatures and that type of thing. And my advice was to say, well, look, go on here, come on here. I've given her open. Whoops. I said, you can come on here, you can speak on my program, and you can speak to local businesses. They could go in the chat room and then send a copy of that to the local council, so that you are then telling them instead of them telling you, and then send it to your local MP as well, because the local councillors, they're probably a waste of space anyway, because most of them are very good at making out they're on your side when they're not. And anyway, I've got the invite there, so if she wants to come on here and speak to us, the invite's there. And I'd like to thank her for a very nice evening. The hypnotherapy was very interesting. I learned a lot of things. I didn't know that it was to get you into. The woman said, "You're not going to be sort of walking around like a chicken or anything like that. There's none of this new agey stuff." And she's very good. And she said it's to get you into a very relaxed state and kind of, find out what the problem is, and then kind of say, well, it's not a problem, these things, and work things out whilst you're in a relaxed state. If I've got it wrong, I do apologise to the lady. I also gave her an invite if she wants to come onto the show. So there's an open invite for both of them. But what I did say is that local councils are trying to close local business. That's exactly what they're trying to do, which fits into this New Holland thing. It fits into Agenda 2030, and I told her that, and she went, "Oh, I looked it up." She put it on. She tapped onto her computer, and she was looking at Agenda 2030. So I think that some of the things I was saying was a little bit, shall we say, I was probably looked on like that, but I don't know. So your guess is as good as mine. But I do hope they come on air, and it'd be very, very nice. And I said I won't go too heavy. I'll be very light, and you'll probably have if you come on as well, it'll probably be the best of both worlds, because you're going to get advice from both sides. So there we are. So there it is. But is there anything else you wanted to mention on that?
I want to get onto this. So
okay.
Yeah, the numbers. This is the follow up in the newspaper. Activists protest climate change deniers talk was the follow up. So this load of nonsense, right? And it says basically the event attracted protesters who feel that climate change is a very real threat. Well, it didn't actually. That's a lie. There was only one person there, and he was the one who'd been igniting the paper to try and get them to form groups to come down and protest. Of course, nobody did. He was the only one. And he said numbers in the protest were small, but so we didn't say it was just him. He said numbers in the protest were small, but so were the numbers of local people going into their meeting. Well, that's an absolute flat out lie. Quentin Deakin, that's a flat out lie, because we had over 60 people in there. So that we outnumbered the protesters 60 odd to 1. So he's a liar. Next time such a group attempts to ignite, but I said I want to ignite people to. I took it off the George Hunt video actually. He said I want to ignite the fires of indignation into people, and he said that after the 1987 World Wilderness Conference, which he attended, when Maurice Strong and Edmund Rothschild basically laid out this plan that there was going to be a huge asset grab on using the World Bank and a thing called the Global Environmental Facility, which was this new conservation bank that George Hunt talked about. Look at his video, Unsaid, the elite plan well ahead on YouTube. Unsaid, the elite plan well ahead. So basically, he says, next time such a group attempts to ignite a community, in their words, I appeal to all in the silent majority to join us in demonstrating for the future of our children and our environment. Well, that's what we were there to do. so people could actually look at their future, because their future is threatened by useful idiots like these who believe what they're told by globalists and bankers. These people are puppets of the worst order. And the fact that they lie about people like me, because I've never lied about them. I've openly invited all these people in, but now I have to define them as useful idiots, liars, and propagandists. And they're incredibly immature as well. But yes, he said Mark Windows, who hosted the talk in Fairborn, told the Cambrian News it was a great success and the hall was pretty full with over 60 people. The organizer, a local man, was pleased with the turnout and the presentations. Okay, there was no protest and many in the room were already well informed and others grateful for the information. A local councillor is fully on board and was already quite familiar with a lot of the facts we presented. We also gained much information from local people which backed up what the speakers were saying. The baseless accusations and logical fallacies of a few failed to make any impact on the turnout. It surpassed all expectations, so we thought we'd balance the books. Chris Hickman, who is the local man, he's the man who put the talk on from the local area, said, I was extremely pleased with the turnout and the positive energy. I had been concerned that the negative campaign against the event would deter people, but I was amazed at the reception. I was pleasantly surprised at the level of knowledge demonstrated by some of those attending. As a local, I am hopeful that something good will come of this. So they did kind of balance the books a bit, but they were using very negative propaganda against us. And so Meirionydd, Labour Party, you're disgraced, and protest planned against talk giving false hope. Then activists protest climate change deniers talk, lies, didn't work. And the slander of these people, and I suppose you think Elvis lives on the moon and you voted Brexit, doesn't work either. So basically, these people have run out of ideas, and they use these Saul Alinsky tactics. Saul Alinsky was a radical housing campaigner in the early 60s, and David Cameron announced in 2010 that people were going to be using the Saul Alinsky rules for radicals, which is a very, very aggressive way of campaigning and attacking people. It's about personal ad hominem attacks. So that's what these people are doing. They're useful idiots for an agenda that they do not understand and cannot comprehend because they don't read. All this stuff's written down, and that's about it, Chris. That's what I want to say on the matter, really. I think we've cleared that up quite nicely.
It certainly have. In chat, there's questions. Now, I don't know. I've heard of them, the Odd Fellows. Now, I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about them?
They're a Freemasonic organisation, yes.
Are they?
They're a Freemasonic organisation.
Are they a branch of the Freemasons, or are they just another word for them?
They're a loose group which is associated with Freemasonic lodges. They're called the Unity of Odd Fellows. They have them in, I think there's quite a large lodge of these in Manchester Unity of Odd Fellows. Look them up. The Odd Fellows, yeah, it's basically a localized network of Masonic lodges, you know. So yes, it's a Masonic-based organisation, I think. Yeah.
No, because there used to be the
Buffaloes. Someone just mentioned the Grand Antediluvian Order of Buffaloes are a massive organisation, and they are involved with other big organisations. They're not as big as they used to be, but I used to do working men's clubs all over the country and social clubs. When I went into the committee rooms, which is often where I used to change, there would be a big picture on the wall with the Grand Order of Antediluvian Buffaloes. It's a very old and powerful Masonic order, yeah.
Because they wore Tommy Cooper hats, didn't they? Used to sort of march around with these funny Tommy Cooper fezzies. So I heard.
Yeah, the fez, yes, because that I think that came in from Turkey, from the Donme. The Freemasonic lodges there were called Donme, and I think it came in from that. Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. I mean, once you look into this, it all looks rather antiquated now, but they still have quite a lot of power. And I know people who've had problems with Freemasons, and of course you would do, because they involve themselves in town planning, in local business organisations, and of course we now have something that's replaced Freemasons, which is the communitarian agenda. So what you've got now is you've got all these people who are just change agents. They're the new Freemasons. It doesn't need to be a society with secrets anymore. It's an open society, as George Soros says, and they're everywhere. So that's the thing. They want to turn everybody into an agent. You don't need us. See, this is the thing about secret societies as well, is that Freemasons aren't a secret society, because if they were secret, you wouldn't know anything about them. But all of their rituals are available. And the first person who put them out was Captain Morgan in the 1800s, and they killed him. Now, there's another fella who've got, there's a book down here I can show you, actually, Chris. It's quite interesting, but it's done from a Christian perspective. And it's called The Deadly Deception.
Ah.
And this is all about going up to the 33rd degree.
Really? Sorry, can you hold that up again? I didn't quite catch that. As the something, the... Could you give the title again? I didn't quite hear it. I'm sorry.
Deadly Deception. I'm trying to get it away from the light. The Deadly Deception.
Yeah, by Jim Shaw. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's from a very Christian point of view, and I think this fellow was a born-again Christian. It's a very interesting book in some ways, but he's really emphasizing the fact that it's a Luciferian doctrine that they follow. It's not the best book on it at all. In fact, if you want to know more about it, there's a description of all of the Freemasonic rituals in other books. So there's nothing secret about what they do. It's the problems that you can have if you get up against people who are in this organization, because they will have these meetings, and if your name comes up, then they can come after you. That's the problem with it, is that it's a society with secrets. It's not a secret society. There's one in every town. But I think its popularity has waned quite a lot.
I think also it's a different what level you're on. I mean, if you're at Duke of Kent level, I think he's 33 degrees, and there's higher ones than that. I think the the local plumber or butcher or whatever who's a member of Freemasons, to me that's about the Boy Scout level, and they're probably they do stuff for charity. Okay, sorry, I didn't quite hear you again.
Yeah, that's pretty described in this book.
Yeah, I think it just depends on that level. But I know that my local council is absolutely full of them, and I think the planning department is full of them, and you get stuff put through planning. If you think, how the hell did that get through? Well, you don't need much of a imagination. I know. Anyway, shall we wrap this up for this evening, Mark? Because I think the sound.
I thought it was pretty good the second bit. It was a bit frustrating the first time we tried it.
Yeah, we're terribly sorry for everybody who was listening to us. The first approach, there was something wrong with the sound, and it sounded as if one of us was on the moon or something, looking for Elvis, and it's like. So this is the second one. I might delete the first one, see how it goes, because someone might
delete the first one because we're not better.
Pretty awful. And back next week, Mark. Same. Sorry, actually, it'd be Thursday. Would that be right? Thursday?
Oh yeah.
Because sorry,
it should be all right. I think I should be back.
Yeah, you never know. We might have those ladies on. You never know. From what I saw last night, they might even be watching this. Who knows? But it's going to be interesting, and it'd be quite interesting. There's two things I was talking about with Caroline. Is we're trying to give awards, because this country has been systematically destroyed, and I think we should have an awards thing for Traitor of the Year or Traitor of the Decade. And my three traitors, top traitors.
Well, it's more like Traitor of the Day at the moment.
That's right, yes. And Caroline nominated Nigel Farage because what he says and what he does are two different things. I've nominated Ted Heath, Winston Churchill, and Oliver Cromwell. I think are the Britain's greatest traitors, who are held as heroes. And I don't know if you've got anybody in mind, any sort of traitor you'd like to nominate as, who should be up there with all the top traitors.
What about that one who betrayed Jeremy Corbyn? Was it McDonnell? What's his name?
Yeah.
Then you've got Jess Phillips, but no one talks about Jess Phillips anymore. She's kind of basically signed her own oblivion warrant. But she was one of them. Yeah, Ruth Smith, that's another one.
Tony
Luciana
Blair,
Berger.
Stephen
Who else?
Fritz,
Tom Watson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Theresa May. That's another one. There's loads of them, really, isn't it? It could go on all day. In fact, it's trying to find one that isn't a traitor that's the problem.
That should be the non-traitor of Westminster. And also, we was going to ask.
Can't find an honourable MP.
Yeah, we was going to ask about topics about talking about homelessness was another one, and also more. I wonder if people might prefer us to talk on archaeology and history. I mean, my particular forte is modern history. I'm afraid, sort of World War One, World War Two, and communism and Cold War and that type of thing. And I think you, Mark, you're very much into. Are you more into sort of ancient history and that type of thing? And possibly flamenco.
Well, history's a big thing. I mean, I'm making a film at the moment about heretics in the Middle Ages, and if you want to get involved in that, go to Patreon. You can support us on Patreon. We do need support. We don't get support from the lobbyists, so we need support from the listeners and the viewers. So do go and have a look at that on Patreon, because I'm going to be doing a series of talks about it all over the country, and also putting the film out. The film's a feature-length documentary. It's all about heresy in the Middle Ages, people who were burnt at the stake for their beliefs, and people who were willingly burnt at the stake. And the act which sealed their fate at the time in the 1500s was called an Act Abolishing Diversity in Opinions, also known as the Act of Six Articles, but mainly known as the Act Abolishing Diversity in Opinions. So it's kind of relevant.
Very interesting. And also, what we could have coming back out is what Professor Edward Dutton has. And what he has a sponsored night where he gets someone on there, and people pay to ask a question. They can put questions in the chat section, but you can actually do that. Apparently, they'll nominate, I don't know. So put a couple of quid in and say, I don't know, do you like fried eggs or something? I don't know. But it works quite well. It's quite interesting. But anyway, on that note, look forward to welcoming you back on. You'll be on Sunday at the normal time. Was it 9 o'clock, isn't it? Sundays on Windows on the World.
Sunday, Windows on the World.net.
Yeah, and there's that bloody awful troll called Eric Von Essex that keeps going on in your chat room there. It gets some, it keeps irritating people. Wonder who he is. And then you're on Wednesday on this channel, which is Windows on the World.
Yeah, we do our Windows on the World YouTube. Yeah, we do that on Wednesday. Yeah, 8 p.m.
Thursday, 7 o'clock next week. And thank you very much for coming on here tonight, Mark.
Yeah.
And I think there's something wrong with this sound even now, because it's starting to cut out a bit.
It's not good.
Because, it's like a sort of transatlantic call. Thank you very much for everybody in the chat room. You've done a fantastic job helping us and telling us that their sound's dropping and things like that. Very kind of you, much appreciated, and thank you very much for joining us. And we'll join you very soon. Thank you very much, and good night. And anything to say, Mark?
Thanks a lot, everyone, for listening. And sorry about the first bit, but it's technology. I often find this with when we're trying to get something on the internet going. There's always problems. So we always get there in the end. You just have to persevere with it. So thanks for persevering.
Well, you are speaking from a secret bunker somewhere, and so am I, because we don't show our face because the establishment will get us. Anyway, thank you very much, and good night.
Well, I want them to show their face. You keep running away.